Okay, everyone, welcome to Medicine Buddha. Um, it's so good to see everyone. I couldn't make it last week because so much was happening. I was finishing up uh, teaching in the UK, and it was just like a bunch of stuff, that I had to take care of last Monday evening at midnight, which is when I was doing it. Um, But so I'm back. I just got back. I just walked in the door like 2 hours ago from London. So I'm back here in Atlanta. So it's really good to be back here. Um, I had a really wonderful trip, and it was just really nice teaching, really teaching in person. For the first time in a couple of years. Actually, the first time. Well, I did. I was in Tucson last. What was it? Last October. I was in Tucson in October. That was the first time, of course, I taught in person. Um, and but it was just really quite powerful. Um, Sister Sadada was joined me as well um, for the trip. She arrived back safely last week. Um, and yeah, lots of good stuff happening. I'm now an international bestseller apparently. Um, the the German edition of Love and Rage tends to be doing really well. Looks like it's doing really well in Germany, so that's really great. I'm offering some Palo Santos. This is we got this in Peru um, last fall. Um, so so take some of this, just offering some of this purification. So I haven't been at home for 3 weeks, so I'm like having to, when you with home, and I'm writing about this in the new book in New Saints. I'm writing about kind of like, you may have heard the politics of homemaking, the radical politics of homemaking, which I used to, which I was first exposed to through Dr. Yasmin Saigula, Dr. Sai, our co-author in Radical Dharma. And so I've been really working with the politics of homemaking. What does it mean to create home, right? And I've been really moved, particularly in the UK, just spending time in like two people's homes, and sleeping and just feeling the warmth, the care of what it means to create a home where you're inviting people to feel cared for, right? And how do we create homes uh, where where we're filling the home with things that we care for, right? And how does that care extend to people that we invite to guests? So that's one part of what I've been working on in terms of the idea. So I take radical homemaking and I'm bringing it into conversation with what I call this kind of indigenous um, understanding of home. Um, and I just call the whole thing the Dharma of home, of homemaking, the Dharma of homemaking. And one of the things I talk about is the consciousness of home. Like the home, the physical space is conscious. My home is conscious, and I relate to my home as a being that needs care because it is a being that needs care. Um, and so when I leave, um, for extended periods of time. I I talk to my home. I say, okay, I'm leaving. I pray and do rituals and ceremonies. I often do a fire puja, before a long trip, where I'm just asking the local deities and protectors to protect my home. I'm telling the home that I'll be leaving. I'm letting the conscious, intelligent energy in the home, spirits, ghosts, what have you, know that I'll be leaving, and when I'll be coming back. And while I'm away, I'm able to kind of mentally kind of still connect to the well-being of the home. And I also ask people to ask my neighbors also to look out for my home, as well while I'm away. But when I get back, I just kind of like, um, what do I do? I reintroduce myself to the home, and I just kind of make offerings. So this is one of the offerings that I'm doing right now. It's just offering, um, incense throughout the home. So awaken the home, I guess, in a way. So anyway, so so yeah, so I'm home. So welcome everyone, who's new, to Medicine Buddha. We're gonna get started in just a moment. We're gonna offer, um, prayers too. So go ahead, and if you have prayer requests, go ahead and put those up. I know we have quite a few. I have quite a few prayers I'm holding for other folks as well. Um, I want to say a special prayer for one of the flight attendants today on my flight, Cheryl, who was very kind, um, and just really made the flight and the journey back, really comfortable. So I'll be offering prayers for her. Um, and Yeah, if you're new, again, feel free to introduce yourself. I see we have, some folks from from Atlanta. We have some local folks. Yeah, we're gonna just see how things are going. There may be maybe in the summer and something happening here in Atlanta. An event, a teaching or something. So we'll see. I mean, after spending, you know, a good portion of 3 weeks teaching in the UK, it was like we didn't have nothing. We did a 45-person, uh, residential retreat, 3-day residential retreat, in Sussex, County, and we had no outbreaks, at all. We were pretty close together. We had specific protocols set up, like everyone had to test every day, so everyone had to bring, um, rapid tests and check every day. And if people ended up positive, we had a quarantine, procedure, set up. But no one really, no one tested positive. I haven't heard anything from any other live event either. So I feel, I'm feeling more confident that this can happen. And I've seen some of our events were very like well organized and planned. Um, I particularly love the Radical Dharma community in London. They had a very wonderful, kind of setup. They had a very limit. They had a large space, capped the number of people who could come. Everyone was masked. Everyone was spread out. So I really like that. So we may try to do something like that here in Atlanta. Um, so yeah, any prayer requests? Go ahead. Put those up. I'm seeing more and more Atlanta people showing up. Here. So so I feel confident that something we can pull something off, in the future. pretty soon. So stay tuned. Welcome to everyone who is joining me for Consuming the World. Um, you know, so um, and Consuming the World is just a course that I'm doing on my platform for those of you who have moved through the Love and Rage course or and going to the Lonesome Valley. Um, but in the future, this will be open to more people as well. But I just want everyone to kind of get ready for the fall when I'll be introducing a meditation course, which will be open to everyone um, as well. Um, so you'll get more information about that in a little bit. So let's see what else. Yeah, it's Easter this week. I think Easter is this week. And I may do Easter. Easter is really quite a powerful, important time for me because of um, this is really how Easter represents multiple rituals and ceremonies in different cultures. It's not just a Christian holiday. It's actually also, this idea of Easter also absorbed some pagan rituals and ceremonies associated with um, deities, related to spring. So Easter eggs and Easter bunnies um, comes from kind of ancient rituals um, in Europe around the observance of spring deities. So, it's really interesting. It's quite fascinating when you start looking into it. How many of our rituals or holidays, right, are have assimilated, old traditions, old lineages of magic um, and different rites, and it just becomes, oh, it's what we do, you know. Um, so many people claim to be very secular or atheists, but have adopted these rituals that are actually quite sacred, like sacred rituals. But we've lost that connection to the sacred, as well. So Easter is one of those times for me, not just the resurrection, that's important, but also awakening. It is, it's this remembering that death is an illusion, that death, is something that is as normal as breathing, right? That to be resurrected, um, to come back means to begin to acknowledge cycles, of death and birth. Death and birth. We're always dying. Not just physical death, but every second is a death. Every second is a birth. Right. We're letting go of the people that we thought we were, giving rise, giving birth to a new person. This is happening every second. I'm a different person than I was at the beginning of this session. That's how quickly this goes. Um, we're always dying. We're always being reborn. And I think Easter reminds me of that. It's just cycles. Um, Then of course we talk about Jesus and the symbols of the crucifixion. Um, and Good Friday, Good Friday is always really energetically intense for me. Good Friday is commemorated as the actual crucifixion of Christ. And um, what it means for hope and liberation to be like erased, and what it means after 3 days for that hope and that liberation to like resurrect and come back, right? How we lose it, how we lose hope and then find hope again. Now, I'm not a theologian, right? But I have taken my fair share of Bible classes in divinity school. So, um, yeah. When I was growing up in church, we always celebrated um, the seven last words of Christ, which are just these words or phrases, actually, that Jesus is said to have spoken as he was, getting close to dying. That's always been really quite powerful for me. There's this deep, transformative power of Christianity before there was Christianity. In the formation, those formative years of Christianity, like there was a lot more happening than perhaps the Bible or what we know as the Bible now. And the Bible is just it's a very censored um, book. The Bible. No one. The Bible just didn't just come about. The Bible, over many centuries, were just oral tales, narratives that people just they spoke because people didn't read or write, in those early communities, but it was an oral communication. And then slowly they began to be transcribed, and that transcribing, of course, things were altered and left out. And then, of course, there were um, deliberate choices being made about what to include. So we have the Gnostic Bible, which is a lot of writing um, that didn't make it into the classical Bible. What excites me also is the Book of Mary, which is a more contemporary rediscovering of the life of Mary. Mary being really Mary Magdalene, being the first apostle that Jesus um, appeared to after his resurrection, which is quite powerful, which is really quite interesting that was left um, in the Gospels. Um, and Yeah, I just I one of the reasons I went to divinity school was actually not to study Buddhism. I just happened to be studying Buddhism, but to really like understand the Bible because that's what I grew up with. That was my roots practice, my root spiritual text. And I wanted to understand how the Bible came about. And it was important for me. Also as someone, as many of us are, who have felt deeply harmed by the Bible and the ways in which the Bible is used to create violence and harm, and that's been for centuries and millennia. Ever since it came about. As a major spiritual text, and to really to study to understand the culture, the histories that these texts emerged in the same way the sutras, the Buddhist sutras, emerged as well. I find Buddhist sutra to be a little clearer. Um, in terms of placing them within a historical, cultural context. You know, my study of the Bible kind of takes a lot. Um, and again, I'm someone I didn't study Hebrew, or Greek. or Aramaic, which is some of the roots languages that one would study, to in Bible studies or theological studies, right? To really get into the real meaning of the text. Anyhow, um, I would just say that there were many cults happening during the time of Jesus that I believe he was being influenced by, um, as well. And I think it's quite interesting. When you know, I'm connected to communities, that are um, that really are quite connected to, I would say, the history and the consciousness of Mary Magdalene, for instance, who Mary Magdalene is viewed in these communities as being, you know, a very powerful being, realized, awakened. Um, they see her as being a consort or wife or partner of Christ, and that her realization matched Christ, Jesus' realization, as well. So I find that all to be really, really quite powerful. Um, yeah, I see, Rachel. Yeah, I've read the meaning of Mary Magdalene. That's a really beautiful book. There are many. I can't put my hands on them, but I do have one text that someone channeled. So when you talk about channeling, you're talking about connecting to the consciousness, which is what we often do in this session. Is touch into the awakened consciousness of a being, um, and then channel that energy, right into our own minds and bodies. And there are people who channel Mary Magdalene, have revealed some really, quite beautiful texts. Um, um, One of my professors in graduate school um, translated the Book of Mary once it was discovered. And when we say discovered, there are communities that have been, once communities, started writing things down and writing these narratives and stories down, they just had them. And depending on what was happening in the culture, they would, hide them. They would put them away, or someone would have a copy, or some wealthy, family or donor or whomever would just collect uh, copies of all of these texts that had been written and transcribed, and they would just hide them. They would put them to the side, or bury them. Put them in caves, right? And we go back and we find them and we say, "Oh my God, here's another copy or another telling of a story." Um, so this is why, like, we have things like the Dead Sea Scrolls, as some of you may have heard of that, was a big kind of finding of ancient texts, as well. One of the funniest things, I took classes on both the New and Old Testament. One of the funniest things that um, we learned was that, when so you had, a wealthy donor come along and say, okay, it's time for us to start writing some of this stuff down. So they would hire scribes, people who were actually literate, to come, and maybe there were older manuscripts that they were asked to kind of rewrite to get a better copy, because we didn't have copy, the copier wasn't around, right? So they would just be spending all days and weeks and months handwriting or recopying these texts, and and because they were really the only people in society that could read, they would just, like, in the margins of some of these texts, would be writing jokes and, like, complaining about, like, sitting there and writing all day, And so, and so that, I find that to be really hilarious. Actually, you're writing these sacred scripts and you're just like, this is bullshit. Why am I here? You're just writing it down, and no one, because of the literacy, like how many people are gonna actually figure out what you're writing. So anyway, I might try to do something on Sunday as well. Some other practice connecting to Mary Magdalene. Um, I like to call it Mary Mags, but that's between me and her. So let's get started. You're not going to get me to do a 2-hour talk again anytime soon. We're going to, 30 minutes, and then we're going to get to practice. All right? So speaking of resurrection, and we've been practicing this, right, since spring arrived, like restoration, resurrection, awakening. I just taught, this weekend retreat last, um, month in the UK, the Dharma of spring awakening, right? And we just focus on what it meant to like awaken. What does it mean to become alive? What does it mean to allow ourselves to be filled with this kind of vibrant, dynamic energy of spring, right? And all of that is directly in line with the practice of Medicine Buddha. What does it mean to channel the consciousness of Medicine Buddha, radiate that energy into your space, and imagine the space becoming alive? Now, I've also been thinking about the practice of Pure Lands. So Pure Lands, I don't think I've ever talked about Pure Lands. So in the mythologies of particularly Buddhist deities, every awakened deity or every awakened Buddha, has their own Pure Land. And you can pray to be reborn in one of these Pure Lands, which is to be reborn in a Pure Land doesn't mean that you're enlightened, but it means that you've obtained, we would say the first Bhumi level. And a Bhumi level is a level that gradually leads you to full awakening. So in Buddhism, we would say there are 10 Bhumis, 10 levels. So let's just say a lot of us haven't really reached a Bhumi. We're still just like regular beings. We're still working with the illusion of ego and self. We're trying to cultivate compassion and wisdom, right, to awaken the mind. So we're still working on that. But we work and work, we practice and practice, and maybe we get to a slight realization of mind. That realization can actually propel us into the first Bhumi, so the lower stages. So once you get onto a Bhumi, enlightenment is guaranteed, So it's like thinking about rolling downhill. Like it's like practice, it's like climbing up the hill. And once you hit the Bhumi, the first Bhumi, you hit the top of the hill, and then the rest of the work is kind of rolling down. So it gets easier in a way. But when you have that one insight into the mind, then you understand what the mind is, and you can lean into that experience of the mind. That is the opening of the first Bhumi. Once you get to the first Bhumi, it's said that you can easily be reborn in a pure realm of a particular Buddha. So in Pure Land Buddhism, You know, Amitabha is a really important deity. Amitabha is the Buddha of limitless light. And do I have? I have an Amitabha picture on my mantle, but I can't get up and get it right now. And we've done Amitabha practice before in the past with Bumi Sparsha. We did some during the first year of quarantine. And Amitabha is used often to as a practice for those who are transitioning into the bardo, the spirit realm. Um, but Amitabha's pure realm, which is called, of course, I forget as soon as I say it, Sukha City, Sukha, Sukha. Anyway, it translates into the realm of happiness. Dewa Chen. There we go. I knew I was going to get it once I started thinking about the English translation. Dewa Chen. So Dewa Chen means land of bliss. Dewa is like happy, um, or bliss, and then Chen is place, so place, the place of bliss. Um, so Dewa Chen is said to be the easiest pure realm to be reborn in. So that's why there are so many lineages dedicated to getting into Dewa Chen. Because Amitabha, through their enlightenment, wanted to make their realm accessible. Um, and then it said that, like, Guru Rinpoche's, Pamasabhava's uh, pure realm, which is Copper Mountain, I think Copper Mountain, is said to be one of the hardest to get in. Actually, his realm, Guru Rinpoche's realm, kind of sounds like a lodge. It's like a Norse kind of lodge, if you study Norse mythology, it's very like gruff and like very well Northern European, so like um lodgy, it's like lodge. It's a pure realm that feels like a lodge. Wood and fire and timbers and snow and stuff. I don't know. Listen, I didn't make any of this up. um, so it said that that's harder to get into. Um, so once you get into a pure realm, it's said that like your consciousness is placed in that mental state of the pure realm. The pure realms aren't places. Nothing is a place. This isn't even where we're at now isn't a place. This is a mental state. Like this is just a thought that we're experiencing. So in the same way, a pure realm is just an enlightened thought that we begin to experience. And from that mental experience, we begin to have a different, more evolved relationship with our consciousness. We begin to have the experience of the non-linear, boundless experience of consciousness, which means that we can emanate, reflections of our particular consciousness into different worlds, different experiences. So a tulku, so in Tibetan Buddhism we have tulkus, these realized beings. A tulku is a Nirmanakaya manifestation. Nirmanakaya means form. And so a tulku, a realized master, is just a being who is emanating into the world from the place of a pure realm. Um, and you like practice in this pure realm, and you just keep practicing. You keep emanating to the world to help beings, um, but you keep moving on up the levels till you reach full Buddhahood. Um, and so there was something else I was going to mention too. like the movie. What is that movie? The Little Buddha. I think it's called The Little Buddha. With Keanu Reeves, who plays the Buddha. Because I don't know how Keanu Reeves keeps getting these roles of being the one, but here we go. This is not going to end up with the Matrix, by the way. I am settled. That's not how it's going to happen. Um, See, I'm not even feeling. It's so weird. I'm not even feeling compelled to talk about the Matrix, even though it's crossed my mind already. Like it's wonderful. This is what practice does. It creates. You know, you can start pushing temptation away, right? So anyway, the Little Buddha with Bridget Fonda, Keanu Reeves. Oh, Soga Rinpoche is in that book, in that movie as well. Um, but anyway, I think it's called the Little Buddha, um, is about this great Tibetan master who passes away and emanates three incarnations of himself into the world. And the movie is about Soga Rinpoche and some other Tibetan lamas coming in and trying to identify who these emanations are of this one great master. And so Bridget Fonda plays the mother of one of the kids who is recognized. But the movie is also flashbacks to the time of the Buddha, which I know is very problematic. I know it's the 90s. So Keanu Reeves plays the Buddha, so he's like brown. You know, I don't know who made that decision to cast Keanu Reeves as a Indian Nepalese prince. Who knows? Like I wasn't, and as we often say, I wasn't at the table for that conversation. Many of us weren't. So this is why we end up with things, media representations that seem so. So anyhow, but again, anyone on a booming level, can emanate, and it's you don't want to get into formulas like you get so many formulas. Like we learned that if you're on the first level of the booming, you can emanate 10 um, emanations into the world. Who knows, right? What that is. But the gist of this is that once we connect to even just a small portion of the essence of our minds, then our capacity to awaken intensifies, but our capacity also to help other beings still trapped in the delusion of ego also magnifies and intensifies. That's the point, right? So I don't know. I was thinking earlier today about so Medicine Buddha has a Pure Land as well. And if you read these descriptions of Pure Land, it's like being in a beautiful garden, and there are pools of like honey, and it rains milk, and the trees grow muffins, and the dirt is like brown sugar. It's just like a fantasy. Um, but it's not quite that. It's like the pure. Here's what the texts say. Here's my experience. So my experience of Medicine Buddha's Pure Land is, um, I mean, this is the experience of all. This is the essence of all Pure Lands, which is the essence of all phenomena. Is space, is openness. There's an emptiness imbued with this energy. Um, Intense, radical fluidity. Um, right, it's a place where a lot of suffering is transcended. Like It's not again, it's not a place, it's an experience. This is an experience where so many things have been transcended, right? And always what we're trying to do in our practice of any deity in Tantric Buddhism is to experience that space, that openness, that fluidity. Things seem really real right now. Like this is in the relative, right? It seems like there's no space, there's intense rigidity, there's war and violence and old age, sickness, death, struggle, right? There seems to be, well, there is, this kind of like roaring of a lot of like violent, conservative organizing and rhetoric, right? That puts a lot of us in danger. Um, there's climate crisis. All this seems real. It's rigid. It's overwhelming, right? And what we're trying to experience and practice is the space that holds all of these experiences, right? Yes, there's intensity happening in the world, and the nature of all of this is space and emptiness. I talk about this all the time. Like everything I'm talking about these days is about this. Is really about the Heart Sutra, right? That both the relative and the absolute arise together in the same moment, right? Um, and what we're practicing and connecting to is the essence of all of this. That yeah, we can be in the world right now and not be consumed by the world. Which is what we're trying to do. For those of you who are joining me for consuming the world, that's what we're trying to connect to. How can I be in the world and not be consumed by the world? And the work that we're doing to not be consumed by the world is to understand what the world really is, what the relative really is, right? And the more we connect to the essence of the relative, which is the expression of the absolute, the more compassion should arise for us, because we begin to understand that there are a lot of beings, countless beings, who are still buying into this, who are still trapped by the realness and the rigidity of everything that's happening. Compassion ultimately comes from the recognition of emptiness. Saying, oh, like there are a whole bunch of beings who are just like buying into this. And how am I going to help them? And we help them because we understand the unbearable suffering and what it means to be consumed by the relative, right? And we help people because we wouldn't be awakened without the intervention of other more realized and awakened beings. I am not here on my own accord. Like I am the product of many lifetimes of being taught, and taking those teachings and training. Even in this lifetime, I'm a product of many teachers who, through their compassion, put up with my bullshit and offered me what I needed to experience more awakening. So I could share that with you, right? You know? So I forget how I got there. I was talking about Pure Lands and the relative and absolute, right? And the Heart Sutra. Um, So the rigidity of everything, right? So what we're trying to practice is connecting to the essence of things so everything isn't so rigid. So when I'm moving through the world, it's like, yeah, I see the world. I see what's happening. I can see into the hearts of people. I can feel the suffering, fear, and everything. I can feel the violence. I can experience the violence, absolutely. Um, but I also know at this point that all this is an illusion, a dream at the same time, right? But I'm not bypassing the relative to privilege the dream. I'm practicing to bring the realization of the ultimate into moving through the relative. So I'm staying, it's like staying on earth. Like we're grounding ourselves to the earth. We're walking on the earth and trying to, well, I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, but so it's like knowing intuitively that there's more happening than what you can perceive through your sense faculties. So when I look at the trajectory of the world in terms of wars and you know right wing conservative movements and climate instability, um, and capitalism, late stage capitalism. Yes, I see and experience the violence, the anxiety, the fear, the overwhelm, and I also see, I also see the essence of it, but I also see that there's something different that's coming, um, that's more aligned with what I would call the beloved community, you know, um, that this is how the beloved community is born, right? Um, by moving through the falling apart of something. And this is how new systems are created. Old systems have to crash, right? This is like the last stages of certain systems. Um, it's like, I was thinking about this too. Since I was in the UK, you know, absolutely fabulous. For those of you who are fans of AbFab, the first AbFab film was called The Last Shout, which is actually great. It was better than the second film that came out a couple of years ago. But it's like the last shout. Like this is everything feels like the last shout, and it's loud. It's real loud. It's disarming. It's alarming. It's overwhelming, but it will pass, right? Um, so it passes. I also was, I was doing some ancestor work with people, um, over in the UK as well. And we were, I was just, really exploring with people how we have to listen to our ancestors, particularly our ancestors who come out of struggle, who come out of oppression, marginalization. You have to listen to them in terms of how they understand change, right? Of course, for me, I'm deeply influenced by Black liberation theology. James Cone, um, being one of our great scholars who passed a couple of years ago. Um, but liberation theology in general, but particularly Black liberation theology that says that, like, things will pass, right? that God is always on the side of the most oppressed, um, that the universe is actually an expression of virtue, goodness, awakening, right? So in this world, in the relative, these experiences that we're having right now, it seems like that we're teetering into the delusion, into the darkness. But the scale of everything, when we talk about everything, everything is just an expression of clarity, So we have to come back to that. We have to understand that everything will bend back towards virtue, you know, um, and that there are many beings in this world system who have emanated into this world system, you know, um, who are here, including Dr. King, Dr. King, and we've talked about this to Dr. King, Harriet Tubman, so many people, you know, emanated to do certain things to nudge us back towards the virtue of the universe, our great bodhisattvas and saints and so forth, things I'm writing about now. Okay. This is why we have to commit to practicing, because if not, the world begins to consume us, the anxiety, the worry, the overwhelm, the fear, the hate. Um, if we don't have a practice, then it's like we start just reacting to the fear, the hate, right? And this is why we have these really violent movements surfacing now, because people don't actually know what to do with a practice. They don't know how to practice with the deep fear, the deep insecurity, right? So the only way they know how to practice is to blame other people for making them uncomfortable. Blame, you know, um, trans folks, right, and queer folks, and black and brown people, immigrants, you know, um, and so forth and so on. Like, it's like, let's just blame, scapegoating, right? Let's just scapegoats. If we can just erase the people who make us uncomfortable, then we can be comfortable, which is not how any of this work. But we sure as hell keep trying to do it and make it work. you know. In the same way Jesus was scapegoated. Jesus was this effigy, right? He was the symbol, this body that was cast as the the embodiment of everything that was wrong, you know. And crucifying Jesus really didn't get us anywhere either, you know. Um, this is why the practice is important. This is why over and over again I say we have to come back and develop a relationship with our own brokenheartedness. We have to practice with discomfort. We have to experience it. We have to call in resources that we need to help hold us move through this experience. Like, this is, if I don't do that, then I start blaming you for my suffering, for my discomfort, or someone else, like I blame other people instead of taking responsibility, you know. Um, but that's the hard path here, and it's very hard. I don't, as I've gotten older and have deepened my practice, there's much more tenderness and openness that I've been experiencing, because I know how hard it is. I know how hard it has been for me to move through the suffering, to move through the trauma, to move through, you know, um, just the hate, and the fear and everything. And so I know how hard that is. And I also know that we don't have a choice. Um, so much of my compassion arises from the realization that this isn't easy. And it also arises, from this understanding that we also have to do this, right? If we want to get free, we have to do this. And one of the things I've realized recently is that not, of course, we've talked about this, like, not everyone actually wants to get free in the same way that I'm talking about freedom, you know, and just I just realized this, the past couple of months where I've had so many conflicts in spiritual communities, as many of you know, like I've had all these conflicts because I'm talking actually about getting free, getting enlightened. And what a lot of communities are actually talking about is getting comfortable and getting settled, right? And there's been this fundamental disconnect that I'm finally able to name. It's like, oh, this is what you're talking about. Like I show up and talk about actual liberation and the work that we have to do that, and then you get pissed off at me because I've made you uncomfortable because comfort is actually your goal, not the discomfort from which true realization arises from. You know. Then I say, oh, okay, and then there's a softening that happens. It's not that like people don't want to do the work. It's just like they've made a choice for a different kind of freedom that doesn't align. Well, it's not freedom, actually. It's not freedom. Being comfortable and happy isn't freedom. Um, it's settling. It's settling. It's people have to hit rock bottom. That will get you stirred up to get free. I was very fortunate to hit rock bottom in my 20s, and I said, "There's no way I'm gonna stick around for this bullshit. There's no way. There's no way I'm gonna continue dealing with this kind of darkness, this delusion, this sadness, this despair, this hollowness." Like I was like, "No way, no, I can't possibly do that." And so I've never been about trying to be happy. I've been like, let's go all the way. And this is what I'm trying to talk about in the book. Like, I hope that I can just offer a clear vision of what I mean by enlightenment and freedom, and of course, framing it around abolition and social movements of freedom, to ground it even more. Um, so that's something that you just kind of have to like be really conscious of. You have to be conscious that you may be surrounded by people who actually have said, this is all I'm going to be doing right now, even if they are practitioners. Like this is all I'm doing right now. I'm not gonna, I'm set. Blah blah blah, whatever it may be. I'm okay. I have what I need. And but for me, that's not enough, right? And that informs every decision that I make, is that pursuit of ultimate liberation. And I do believe that I can make it in this life. And this is another thing, another piece I'm writing about right now as well, is that like we actually have to believe that we can get free. So you may want to get free. You may actually be on this journey to really get enlightened, but some of us just don't believe in it. So our practice just becomes repetitive and performative, and that doesn't get us anywhere. Like you have to believe that something else is possible. Like you have to, like there can there can't be a doubt, right? That you particularly can experience awakening in the physical body and the relative. You know, like there can't be any doubts. And again, as I've said before, like I was kind of born with this deep curiosity to figure out what was happening in the world and what was, that was like, this can't be it. Like it's gotta be more than what I'm sensing, or more than what I'm perceiving through my senses. Because it's too rigid. It doesn't make sense. Like the world just never made sense to me. You know, and that's what's driven, all of like everything that I do, like practice and study of tantra and magic and studying with all these different people and different traditions and lineages. And you always have to know that what you're getting is more than just Buddhism. you know um, Buddhism is much more expansive than what we're taught, actually. We have to be careful that sometimes we get taught Buddhism from people who are themselves quite limited and rigid. And so that makes the transmission of Dharma quite limited as well. Dharma actually has no bounds, it's boundless. Like Dharma is everywhere. Um, the prayer for, see, this is what happens. Like I said, I'm going to practice, and then I start setting up the practice, then I start talking about something else. There's 2 hours down the road, right? And nothing has happened. Um, Enlightenment is a multi-lifetime project, right? You know, but I will say that if you're in the session, you're on your way. Um, you're going in the right direction. Um, this is so. This is so very complex. Much more complex than I have time tonight to really get into. I hate to say certain things. I don't want you all to get like arrogant, but I'm going to say this, but don't take it seriously. What I'm going to say is that some of you are actually quite awakened beings, right? And there is an intentionality to emanating in this moment, in this body, where you feel disconnected from that awakening on purpose. So I'm just going to say that, you know, of course, some of you are going to be like, well, that's me. I'm already enlightened. um, it's not random. That's this is this is not random that you're alive right now in this world system on this planet right now. It's not this is not random. you know there is a staggering level of organization um, related to this world at this moment. Um, when I say organization, I mean there's this staggering amount of organizing that's been done for this world for this moment that this world is moving through to help move this world through this period, this apocalypse. And I think many of you are part of that organizing. You know, um, because so much of the work is being here and metabolizing so much of this intense, disembodied energy, and we're the ones moving this energy. This practice is part of stabilizing and metabolizing all of this energy, all the heartbrokenness, all the rage, the hate, the fear, the insecurity, the trauma, like we're doing this collective work together, even though we're just on screens all over the world. It's still collective work that we're doing together, right? And this isn't random. You know, if you're doing this practice with me, if you're doing this practice with other great teachers, and I'm not saying I'm a great teacher, but I'm saying, you know, if you're practicing with other people, doing this kind of healing, liberatory work, then, you know, then you chose this. Like you chose to be here. Like you chose to be here to do this at this moment. As there are countless unseen, disembodied beings doing the same thing right now. Um, you know, some of you know slavery abolition wouldn't have worked without the unseen world. You know, without, you know, spirits and other beings being channeled through these great abolitionists like Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth, right? And many others actually. Um, that there's right. So what in the next book, in New Saints, what I'm arguing is that there is no such thing as abolition in this world if it's not connected to the unseen world. You know, everyone's doing prison abolition and, you know, abolition, you know, of course, you know, I think sometimes abolition, many of us, our introduction to abolitionism is prison abolition, you know. But real abolition and the way abolition emerged for us in this country, in the United States, was a project between the seen and unseen world. And its leaders were themselves beings who occupied both worlds, both the unseen world, the spirit world, bardo, whatever, and the physical world, right? True freedom can't come about with just organizing in the physical world. It has to be in concert with the non-physical world, you know, because all the violence, the harm, the things that we're struggling with are collaborative projects between the physical world and the unseen world, i.e., there are many demons who are bridging both worlds, creating these systems of violence, who are underlining many of these systems of violence. Now, I know that's completely out there for many of you, you know, but we know we're going to have to get hip to this. You know, we're going to get real hip to. And if you've been with me for any number of time, you're already getting hip. You're already hip. You know, the seven homecomings is just a practice that I developed to get people thinking about bridging their practice with the unseen world. You know, you already get that. You know, I think many people already realize that. You know, there's no abolition of anything without working with the unseen world, without the ancestors, without the deities, without plant consciousness, without, you know, I mean, it's the unseen world is just like out there. It's like, oh, you know. But for us, deities, ancestors, right, protectors, you know, that's, you know, that we need to focus on. So, so much of my work in our practice in this session, which we're getting into, is really about me trying to think of ways to get you connected to what I experience in the quickest, shortest way possible, um, without spending 20 years of doing prostrations and chanting. Um, how do we touch the essence now? And I do believe that's quite possible to do that now. You know. So let's begin here. So at the beginning of this practice, let's take a drink. At the beginning of our practice, let's start by calling ourselves into the space. So it's like a lot's been said, a lot's been done, everyone's had a busy day to some extent. So let's just start calling ourselves into the space. And we do that just by saying, I'm here. I'm here in this moment on this timeline. I'm sitting or lying down, whichever, whatever it is, I am being held by something. And what is the sensation? Can you notice the sensation of being held by something? The couch, the seat, the chair, the cushion, the floor. So I'm here, like my attention is being held, right, by the seat. So there's the basic sensation of being held by the seat, but allowing your awareness to kind of open from the seat to begin to notice the space around you. What are you hearing? What are you sensing? What are you feeling? So again, our attention is being held by the sensation of being held by something. Our body is meeting something. And that's the roots, like the root anchor, right? And so you have the roots in that anchor, and then let your awareness from that root blossom out into the space around you. So you both feel the roots, the anchor, and you're becoming aware of everything else around you. So don't make this so complicated. Like as I always, I often say, just make it easy. Make this real easy, right? Just the anchor. It's like a tree, right? The vision I have is a tree. I'm anchored on the seat, and my awareness is just kind of expanding outwards. Right? And in the space around you, can you call in your benefactors? And so those who are new to this practice, it's seven homecomings practice, but seven homecomings is a benefactor. So can you imagine the space around you being filled with all the beings who care for you, who love you, from teachers and guides and elders to mentors, deities, spirits, right? Maybe your space is being filled with the energy of Dharma itself, or communities that you're a part of who love you. This is incredibly important, right? And this is something that I was really emphasizing on tour with all the communities, is that let's start practicing, you know, with this idea of like always being surrounded by beings who want us to be safe and happy and cared for. And their care begins to radiate in the space around you. I, of course, this is one of my main practices, so I just feel this warmth awakening around me. And this is the point where you have to move through the discomfort that arises for many of us still when we're working with unconditional care, unconditional love. To move through that. And so slowly you're allowing yourself to be filled with this energy of care. You're absorbing it, but slowly. And it's being absorbed through the skin and muscles and organs and tissue and so forth. And this is the space that I want to offer prayer in. Um, like when I feel surrounded by the care of benefactors, like this is a space that I feel that I can offer my prayers into. And I want you all to become praying people. Like, as we used to say growing up, you know, becoming a prayer warrior. Like we had prayer warriors. Like there were people. That's what they did. Like if there was something that was going on, you let them know. They would just pray. You know, um, I want to encourage you to start praying. Offering into this field of unconditional care, articulating what you need so that these benefactors can know, in a direct way what you need. And they begin to shape causes and conditions to bring about what you need for yourself and for others, right? So just looking at our prayers tonight, I'm going to begin to offer these prayers, and I just want to just call the attention of all the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, the saints, the protectors, the essence of all the elements of this phenomenal world, all our local deities and protectors, the consciousness of our homes. I call into the space light, clarity, love, compassion, kindness, gentleness, tenderness, the essence of awakening itself. I call into this space our ancestors, all of our ancestors who love us, who are protecting us, but also the ancestors who are trying to change, who realize what they did in their life maybe wasn't conducive to benefiting themselves or others, and they want to change. Even those ancestors who want to change, who are trying to change, I welcome you and we pray for you as well. That this change continues, that you awaken to your essence. Having called all these beings into the space, we want to offer prayers for Barbara, who's now in hospice, that she gets all that she needs, and for her loved ones, especially her 14-year-old daughter, may she know her wholeness through the loss of the only parent she has really known. Offering prayers for my visit with an orthopedist tomorrow, so I can get a clear sense of how to heal this knee issue that is very limiting and painful at the moment. I'm offering prayers for my husband who has chosen to end our 30-year marriage. We offer prayers for your deep well-being, happiness, and healing for you too, Mary. I think that's how you pronounce it. We're offering prayers for my husband who is struggling with depression, my friend Flora and her mother who are navigating illness, to my high school friend Dana, who died as a result of alcohol and drug addiction last week, to my mother-in-law who has dementia and doesn't know today is her 80th birthday. We're offering prayers for faith and guidance right now. Offering prayers for my wife who is dealing with health issues. Prayers for myself as I prepare to have major surgery next month. Offering prayers for my continued practice, for patients with the experience of discomfort, and for all those who are sick and isolated. Prayers for my growing child. We're offering prayers for my coworker M, who is experiencing harm and recovering from health issues. Prayers for a friend F, who is experiencing multiple losses. Prayers for Sangha siblings G and R, who are experiencing chronic illness. Offering prayers for us all. May we wind down from the grind culture more and more. Offering prayers for Tati as she continues to navigate the effects of stress and a harmful work environment. Offering prayers for my son who has chronic physical and mental illnesses. Offering prayers of gratitude for the herbalists and plant medicines of the world. Continue to offer prayers for everyone in Ukraine and the whole surrounding area, for everyone who's had to flee their homes, for those helping with all the refugees, and for the Russian people who are mostly in the dark with no media about what is happening. Offering prayers for the many people suffering from oppression and war, including those who have lost their homes or who have left their homes and homeland or adopted homeland. Prayers for myself for strength and courage to face my own grief and losses. Offering prayer for all suffering ravages of war. Offering prayers for my father, Jonathan Jackson, as he moves through the bardo. Offering prayers for the brokenhearted. Offering prayers for my mom as she plans my father's memorial through grief. Prayers for myself, my brother Tom, and my sister Kate as we move through conflict and trauma and grief. That we find a way to share space with each other, free from harm, while we grieve as an imperfect family. Offering prayers for my brother who is experiencing acute mental illness right now. Offering prayers for Patricia Galish, who's undergoing chemo. Absolutely. Offering prayers for my partner who is having a challenging time visiting their family, who struggle with really being seen to them fully. Offering prayers for Spring Washam in the hospital being treated for a rare tropical disease. May she feel how much she is loved, and may the treatment be successful. Offering prayers for Asada Ratcliffe and Tanisha Dandridge, who have lost loved ones suddenly. Offering prayers for my wife, Anna, that she may get understanding and healing for intense recurrent abdominal pain that the medical system has not been able to solve. Prayers for both of us to have what we need to be able to work with this and continue to guide our 1 month old daughter with love. I want to also offer prayers for my friend Patrick, who is moving deeper into the stages of dementia. Continue to offer prayers for Mike. I continue to offer prayers for the land, that the land may experience rejuvenation, may experience a release, a reawakening. I pray for old, ancient, liberatory paths of awakening to begin to reemerge in our practice, in our traditions, in our ceremonies and rituals. I pray for all of those who feel as if we're overwhelmed by the hate from being hurt so much by systems and by people. I pray for all of us still struggling through the impact of COVID and all those we've lost because of COVID. As we continue to offer prayers, I want you to begin to offer prayers not just for what we need to see, but begin to offer prayers for the world. that we want to see come about? What does it mean to pray for a world where everyone has their needs met, that there are resources enough to go around, where people experience safety and community? What does it mean to live in a world where we're concerned for one another? Right? That none of us feel erased or marginalized or lost. As you deeply absorb um, the care of your benefactors, can you imagine through their care being the fuel, the stimulus, what it would mean for this world to come about? Because that would be an expression of the pure world, or the pure realm of medicine Buddha, of really of all Buddhists, all awakened beings. But we don't have to go anywhere to experience a pure realm. And can you imagine that world just arising around you? In your imagination, what would it be like just to be in this world right now? The world that we've been dreaming about, the world that many of us have been working towards, just for it to just arise, a world of everything that we've just mentioned, but a world where people are able just to grieve openly and publicly, and for that grief to be held, and for communal, collective, emotional labor to be done together, not just by individuals. And one of the, the main things that creates the transformation of places into enlightened sacred places is the ways in which we're able to radiate from our minds, from our bodies, this awakened energy into the spaces that actually begins to transform spaces into these enlightened sacred places. So again, just we're being filled with this energy of care from our benefactors, and then we begin to radiate out this energy of care, this energy of awakened consciousness into the space around us. So we become like a sun, the sun, radiating warmth and light and clarity into the space. We awaken the space around us. And we're going to offer our main mantra tonight. My drum is not accessible at this moment. That has changed locations. So um, I'm just gonna chant it, our mantra without the drum. Tea taum bacon say, maha bacon say, rasa sumo gate soha. And this is a prayer to Medicine Buddha for healing. Medicine Buddha, please heal me is one of the translations of this mantra. Okay, so we begin. O te a taum bacon se, maha bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, maha bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, maha bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, ma bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, ma bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, ma bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, ma bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, ma bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, ma bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, ma bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, ma bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, ma bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, ma bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, ma bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, ma bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, ma bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, ma bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, ma bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, ma bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, ma bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, ma bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, ma bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, ma bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, ma bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, ma bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, ma bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. Te a taum bacon se, ma bacon se, rasa sumum gatis oha. 제야자옴대연세 배연세 마하배연세 라자수문가테수아 제야자옴대연세 배연세 마하배연세 라자수문가테수아 제야자옴대연세 배연세 마하배연세 라자수문가테수아 제야자옴대연세 배연세 마배연세 아스수문가지수아 제야자옴대연세 배연세 마배연세 아스수문가지수아 제야자옴대연세 배연세 마배연세 아스수문가지수아 제야자옴대연세 배연세 마배연세 아수스문가티수아 제야자옴대연세 배연세 마배연세 아수스문가티수아 제야자옴대연세 배연세 마배연세 아수스문가티수아 제야자옴대연세 배연세 마배연세 라스수만가리소아 제야자옴대연세 배연세 마배연세 라스수만가리소아 제야자옴대연세 배연세 마배연세 라스수만가리소아 제야자옴대연세 배연세 마배연세 라스수만가테수아 제야자옴대연세 배연세 마배연세 라스수만가테수아 제야자옴대연세 배연세 마배연세 라스수만가테수아 제야자옴대연세 배연세 마배연세 아스수문가테수아 제야자옴대연세 배연세 마배연세 아스수문가테수아 제야자옴대연세 배연세 마배연세 아스수문가테수아 제야자옴대연세 배연세 마배연세 라스수문가테수아 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 제야자옴대연세 배연세 마배연세 라스수문가테 수아. And so our final prayer now, as we begin to transition out of our practice, is to pray that this world, this pure world, this manifestation of the dream that we're all working towards, that this energy is dispersed throughout the whole world, joining the energy and prayers and work and aspiration of so many beings right now working to bring about this new, equitable, beloved community. that our prayer, our practice in this moment joins with the prayer and practice and labor of countless beings, creating the causes and conditions for this world to come about as quickly as possible. We continue to imagine all those we've offered prayers for as well, that this energy is also dedicated to them, that everything that they need, their healing, their guidance, their liberation, all of that is brought about through our practice tonight. When you're ready, just shifting your attention back to your seat. Just noticing the weight of your body making contact with the seat. Calling yourself back into this time, this moment. And slowly, when you're ready, just beginning to reawaken the body, do some simple movements, some stretching, what have you. We'll turn our attention to our closing prayer, which is Shantideva's prayer from the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And we will recite this in the chat box. We will recite this 3 times together. Okay. May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures, and until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. May I be a protector for those without protection, and a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures, and until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. And finally, may I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures, and until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. All right. Thank you all so much for your practice tonight. So Denise, I see you have a question. You spoke a little while ago about getting comfortable in the extremes and a sudden unexpected experience of deep spaciousness followed by intense contraction. And now a lot of grief and confusion. I think you're speaking to this right now. Yeah. Yeah. Um, it's when it's it's you have that moment of space and you realize what's happening and then you think about it and then you shut down again, you contract again, right? Um, but what we're training to do is to, well, actually what the training is relaxing into these experiences of spaciousness, not doing anything to keep it open, not getting attached to it coming again. But it's like when it happens, I just fall into it and let it hold me. And as it holds me, it holds everything else, like the grief and sadness and so forth. You know. But we do contract when we start reacting. Like we're like, oh, this can't be true, this can't be real. I'm having this moment of spaciousness. And you start thinking about it and reacting, and then it just shuts down again, right? Because all it is just letting that experience be there, that openness, and knowing our tendency to react. You know, just letting it be there. Um, yeah, yeah. I had some incredible um, kinds of um, what am I saying? Like really, I just connected. I connected to some really powerful streams of magic in the UK, um, which has been really restorative for me, um, and just really expansive and opening. Um, and so I've been really grateful for that. Um, yeah. So anyway, um, so thank you, everyone. We'll be back here next Monday. And until then, we have lots of recorded sessions for you to go back and revisit, particularly if you're new, um, as well. Okay. All right. So thank you, everyone, and I'll see you again at some point. Okay.